My stepson saw me sunbathing by the lake. And I whispered, "Go on." It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. Just rest. Just peace. But when he touched my back, everything changed. I should have pulled away. I didn't. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in years. I never thought I'd become the kind of woman who lets silence speak louder than rules. But that afternoon, the quiet between us was heavier than any words. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend, just me, the lake, and Tyler, my stepson, 18, sweet, thoughtful, too thoughtful, maybe. The lake house had always been a place for family, for traditions, summers filled with noise, grilled corn, sunscreen, and laughter echoing off the water. But this time, it was just the two of us. Will, my ex-husband, had bailed last minute, citing work. Like always, he'd sent Tyler with a weak apology and a duffel bag. I should have said no. I should have known what that kind of silence could do to a woman who'd been touched only by loneliness for years. Tyler had grown, taller than his father now, his voice deeper, his kindness no longer boyish. It lingered. When I laid out on the dock in my towel, I wasn't trying to be anything. I just wanted to feel the sun on my skin and pretend I still existed. But he saw me. He hesitated. Then came the words that slipped out of me before I even thought, "Go on." It wasn't planned. It wasn't right. But it happened. And once it did, I couldn't take it back. I don't expect you to understand. I don't even understand myself. But I'll tell you everything. And you can decide if I'm a monster. Or just unbearably human. The truth is, I stopped feeling like someone's wife long before the papers were signed. Will and I hadn't touched, really touched, for nearly 2 years before the divorce. We shared a house, shared chores, shared lies. He had his late nights, his business trips, his endless distractions. I had the silence, and eventually, I made peace with being invisible. When Tyler came to live with us full-time during the last year of our marriage, it felt like someone had lit a candle in a room that had gone dim. Not in a romantic way. Not then. Just human warmth. He noticed things, like when I changed my hair. Or when I left the dinner table early without eating. Will never asked why. Tyler did. After the split, Will moved on fast. New condo. New woman. New everything. I stayed in the same house for a while. But it felt like wearing clothes that didn't fit anymore. So I left. I rented a smaller place. Changed the locks. Started buying candles again. Tyler visited occasionally. Always polite. Always bringing something. Flowers. Groceries. Questions. He'd grown into a man without me noticing. And yet, with him, I felt more seen than I ever did as someone's wife. That summer, when Will asked if I could take Tyler to the lake house alone. I hesitated, but I said yes. I thought I could handle it. I thought I knew myself. I didn't. I met Tyler when he was 10. He was polite, serious, and painfully quiet. Will used to say it was just a phase. I used to think it was sadness. At first, he treated me like a guest in his father's house. Always formal, always distant. But I made dinner, folded his laundry, remembered the name of the stuffed lion he used to sleep with. Over time, the distance softened. He started calling me Marissa. And then, eventually, Mom. It was a name I never asked for. But when he said it, I almost cried. By the time he turned 16, we had a rhythm. Saturday pancakes, long drives, inside jokes no one else understood. He'd grown into someone kind, thoughtful, the kind of young man who holds the door open without thinking twice. But what I didn't realize, what snuck up on me slowly, was how easily that kindness filled a space I hadn't noticed was empty. When I'd speak, he listened, not out of obligation, but with real attention. When I cried, quiet, late-night tears I thought no one saw, he noticed. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me. That silence, his presence, it was more than Will had given me in years. I never saw him as anything more than my stepson. Until I did. And once I did, I couldn't unsee it. That summer, the air around us changed. And neither of us said it aloud, but we both felt it. The first day at the lake house was quiet, too quiet. The air was heavy with heat. The kind that sticks to your skin and slows your thoughts. I opened the windows, let the breeze in, unpacked slowly. Tyler carried the bags, set up the porch chairs, asked if I needed anything. He was always like that, considerate to the point of guilt. We didn't talk much that afternoon. Just moved through the house like ghosts revisiting an old life. It had been 2 years since I was last there. Everything was the same, except for us. Later, I spread out a towel on the dock. The sun was low, casting soft gold across the lake. I laid on my stomach, eyes closed, letting myself disappear into the warmth. I hadn't worn that swimsuit in years. I wasn't trying to be seen. I just wanted to feel something. "Do you want sunscreen?" he asked from behind me, hesitant. I nodded. "Please, just my back." He was quiet for a moment. Then I felt the bottle press lightly against my shoulder blade, the cold lotion shocking on hot skin. His hands followed, slow, gentle, careful. Too careful. I told myself it was nothing, just a thoughtful gesture, just sunscreen. But my breath caught when his fingers moved lower, pausing at the small of my back. He hesitated. So did I. Then, I said it, soft, almost a breath. "Go on." He didn't answer, but he didn't stop, either. And in that single moment, I felt the rules I'd built around me start to tremble. Not fall, not yet. But tremble, just enough to know they wouldn't hold for long. His hands didn't rush. They lingered, tracing slow, deliberate circles across my back. There was no music, no words, just the soft ripple of the lake, the occasional bird call, and the quiet thud of my heart trying to convince me this was still innocent. It wasn't. I felt his breath before I heard it. Close, shallow, hesitant. When his fingers reached the curve just above my waist, they stopped again, hovering. That was the moment I should have sat up, should have shifted, laughed it off, said something to break the spell. But I didn't move. The sun burned into my skin. The heat beneath it burned deeper. And then, he touched lower. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't aggressive. It was almost reverent, like he wasn't sure if I'd break apart beneath his hands. Maybe I would have. But I didn't ask him to stop. I didn't even breathe. Instead, I let it happen, let myself float inside that terrible, quiet space where guilt and desire bleed into each other until you can't tell which one you're feeling more. I closed my eyes, told myself this wasn't real. It was just touch, just comfort, just a moment. But even in the middle of it, I knew that wasn't true. Because something shifted in the air between us, the kind of shift you can't take back. And when I finally sat up and looked at him, really looked, he didn't look away. Neither did I. There was no kiss, no dramatic line crossed. But in that pause, in that mutual silence, we both knew. We had already stepped over it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sheets felt too warm, the room too still. I kept replaying it, his hands, his silence, the way my own body didn't resist. I told myself it hadn't gone too far, that it was just a boundary pushed, not broken. But I knew better. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, listening for his footsteps, even though I didn't want to hear them. Or maybe I did. There's something cruel about how the body remembers things the mind wants to forget. My skin still tingled where he touched me. And worse, I wanted that feeling again. It wasn't about lust, not exactly. It was about being seen, being wanted, being alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. When Will touched me, on the rare occasions that he did, it felt obligatory. Mechanical, a task to finish, but Tyler's touch was different. It asked questions, it waited, it listened. And what terrified me most was that I answered. I got up just before sunrise, made coffee, didn't drink it. I stood by the window, watching the lake shimmer in the early light, and tried to convince myself this would all pass. that it was heat, loneliness, a one-time mistake. But when I heard his door creak open, and his bare feet pad softly down the hall, I didn't turn away. I didn't brace myself. I just closed my eyes and let the stillness settle over me. Thick and quiet. Because part of me already knew. The worst had not happened yet. But it would. I avoided him the next day. I busied myself with laundry that didn't need doing, wiped down countertops twice, and spent an hour reorganizing the spice rack. Anything to keep my hands moving. Anything to keep my eyes from meeting his. Tyler didn't push. He didn't ask. He simply existed around me, quiet, present, careful, too careful. When I brushed past him in the hallway, I felt the tension in his breath. The unspoken question, was it okay? Were we okay? I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night, I locked my bedroom door. Not because I thought he'd come in, but because I was afraid I'd open it if he did. Sleep came in fragments. I dreamed of water, cold, endless water. In one dream, I was standing on the edge of the dock, arms open, waiting for something to pull me under. When I woke, my pillow was damp, my body aching from how tightly I'd curled into myself. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. His handwriting, small and neat. Went for a walk, didn't want to wake you, made coffee. Just that. No apology, no explanation, no pressure. And somehow, that hurt more. Because it meant he felt it too. The shift, the weight, the silence between us that now held too much. I sat at the table, untouched coffee in hand, and stared out the window for what felt like hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just existed, frozen inside a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. That evening, I told myself it had to end. Whatever had passed between us, intentional or not, could not happen again. I rehearsed the words in my head. This was a mistake. We crossed a line. We go back to how things were. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Tyler was in the living room, barefoot, reading. The golden light from the setting sun painted soft shadows across his face. He looked peaceful, young, and yet, not a boy anymore. I stood in the doorway longer than I should have. "Dinner?" I asked finally, my voice small. He nodded without looking up. "Sure." We moved like strangers that night, polite, restrained, each careful not to brush against the other. I almost convinced myself it could be normal again. Almost. But later, as I stood in the hallway outside my room, I didn't lock the door. I stared at the knob for a long time, hand hovering. And then, I walked away. I lay in bed, facing the wall, heart pounding for reasons I didn't want to name. I heard his door open, then close, then silence. But silence has its own weight. Minutes passed. Then, soft footsteps. I didn't move. When the door creaked open, I still didn't move. He stood there, not saying a word, not touching me, just breathing. And when he finally crossed the room and sat beside me, I turned toward him. I didn't say, "Stop." I didn't say anything at all. Because in that moment, what scared me most wasn't what we were doing. It was how badly I wanted it. The days that followed felt dreamlike, not soft or sweet, but suspended, weightless, like we were drifting in a space where time moved differently. Tyler and I didn't speak about what happened, not once. But it hovered in the air between us, heavy and fragile. He was gentler than ever, helping with breakfast, taking long walks, never pushing, never asking, as if he knew I was unraveling slowly, thread by thread. I thought I was hiding it well. I told myself it would fade, that I'd pack it all away when we left the lake. The feelings, the moments I couldn't explain. But secrets don't disappear, they root, they rot, and sometimes, they resurface. 3 days before we were set to leave, I opened the lake house's old office closet, looking for spare linens. What I found instead was an old security panel blinking red. Confused, I followed the wire to a half-covered device on the shelf. A still operational camera, dusty, but recording. I stared at it for a full minute before breathing again. Had it been on? Had it seen? Panic surged through me, quiet, but sharp. I unplugged it, hand trembling, but it was too late for that. My mind raced through every moment on the dock. In the living room, in my bedroom, how much had it seen? And worse, was someone watching? That night, while checking emails on my laptop, I saw one marked, no subject, no sender. Just a message. Hope you enjoyed your little retreat. Some memories last longer than others. Attached was a single image, me, on the dock, sunbathing, from behind. Grainy, but unmistakable. My chest tightened, not just from fear, but recognition. Will. Of course it was him. I wasn't just watched. I was set up. I didn't tell Tyler. I couldn't. The image, the message, the truth. I stared at that single frame for hours. The way it froze me in time, unaware. Exposed. Already condemned. Will had been watching, or worse, waiting, and I had walked straight into it. I deleted the email, but not from memory. The last morning at the lake house was quiet. Tyler packed the car while I wiped down the counters like it mattered. Neither of us spoke much. He smiled at me before we left. Soft, careful, like he knew the dream was ending. On the drive home, I kept my window open, letting the wind whip my hair, hoping it would carry the guilt off my skin. It didn't. I dropped him off at Will's place. And for a second, just a second, Tyler lingered at the door. Like he wanted to say something. But he didn't. And I didn't stop him. Now, back in my small apartment, surrounded by cold walls and unread books, I sit with a truth no one else will ever know. That for one fragile summer, I broke. Not out of lust. Not out of revenge. But because I needed to be seen. And he saw me.